Hey guys, this is Nathan and welcome to the Gaming 4. Today in this Unturned Map Editor tutorial, I'm going to be doing a video that has been much requested and I finally got around to doing it. And the main reason for this is because I didn't actually know how to do this myself. So for those of you who are new to the Unturned Map Editor, you guys should know that in the past, the materials tool used to be way simpler to use. After some updates though, it's become a lot more complicated and it's hard to custom paint your own materials on. So today I'm going to be showing you guys how to do and use all of it. So for those of you who are familiar with the old version, some of the concepts will stay the same. But anyway, let's get into it. So I'm just going to start by letting you guys know how to use it in the most easiest and simplest fashion. Now if you guys can see, we've got some dirt that is around the houses and stuff like that. Now this has been naturally spawned there, and the way you do that is you press bake high quality or bake low quality. Now there is a difference between the two. You should be able to see it. Low quality, this is low quality. There's basic lines, not much detail to it, pretty much basic shapes. You break high quality and you get some shading and some speckles and stuff like that. And so pretty much what this baking does is it surrounds large objects with sort of a natural dirt sort of thing so that grass doesn't show up in the floors. That's the main purpose of it. It also does a good job of decorating your map as well. So that I would definitely suggest you guys use this, at least for when you start your maps, because it also deals with heights and stuff like that. So let's say I've got a hill right here. Let's go back to materials and let's bake high quality. As you guys can see, it has automatically put dirt on the slopes of these hills where it might be too steep to put grass. Now of course you guys can configure that, and I'll go into that when I get into all these options over here. So what I'm doing right now is pretty much with base options. Nothing has been changed. Everything's at defaults. So let's get into how to custom change the options so you can do what you want exactly. So I'm going to use stone as an example here. Now I'm going to go over some of these things, these sliders first. And pretty much overgrowth controls pretty much how much of the details and resources items spawn on it. So if you look at details, it's all these flowers and grass and stuff. Resources is trees, bushes, stuff like that. So if you make the overgrowth super high, you'll have a lot more of them as well on your map. And if you put chance up as well, there'll be a bigger chance of them spawning as well. So you can mess around with those. Those will change the amounts of details and resources on that specific material. Now of course this changes per material. So sand and road and gravel and grass can all have different slider values for these. By default, grass is all the way max. So to give you a baseline, grass has a lot of stuff on it and it's all the way max. So if you want to have a crap ton of stuff on your map, max them both out. That's going to be something though that you're going to have to experiment with. And of course you guys will find out the best ways to do that as you make your map. Now in terms of steepness, this comes into play when you're baking. So notice how the dirt is baked onto this side of the mountain and hills. Well, the way it does that is it tests how steep the land is. Now if we look at grass, it has a steepness of 0. So pretty much grass is going to spawn anywhere that's relatively flat. Now obviously grass is spawning on these areas which are not completely flat. There is some give to this, so generally grass will spawn in the flatter areas. Now let's compare dirt. Dirt has a steepness of about halfway, and as you guys can see, dirt is taking the steepest parts from the grass. So let's put dirt steepness all the way down to 0 and bake again. As you guys can see, there is no dirt because the dirt doesn't override the grass. Grass is going to override most materials, and whatever ones override each other, you're gonna have to experiment with that. I don't know exactly, but a good way to customize these hills and stuff for baking with high quality and low quality is just adjusting the steepness. So we're gonna put steepness for dirt up just a little bit. As you guys can see, it's taken over a lot of this area. So I'm gonna boost it up a little bit, and we're starting to get some grass back on the top, and that looks pretty good. So let's say I want to add some stone in there. You can add multiple materials to this. So I'm going to put stone here, and the steepness is at 0, so pretty much it's not going to put any stone down. And I'm going to actually put stone a little steeper than dirt. So now when we bake, the steeper areas now have stone on them. And so it really starts to make a realistic looking terrain without you having to do much work. So you guys can mess around with those by default. stone is going to be steeper than dirt, and dirt's usually going to be a little shallower. So of course you guys can mess around with those and choose your best settings. It's going to depend on your map as well. You can incorporate any of the materials there as well. So let's go back to stone, and I'm going to put steepness down and just bake it out, and let us see what transition does. So pretty much transition, it has to do with baking as well. I am going to need a little steepness for this, but it has to do with how much room the stone takes up and how much room it takes to transition from one material to another. Now right now the transition is at 0, so as you can see, that's the base amount of transition without any extra. So let's move transition up and bake again. As you guys can see, it is expanded and it's taking more room to transition than it would have before. So of course there's all sorts of values in between to change it, varying amounts. You guys can obviously mess with that again as well. So that's pretty much how transitioning works. In terms of height, this is also very complicated. It does have to do with baking as well. So generally, if height is at 1, the material is not going to be baked onto the ground unless you're using steepness. So let's say the height of this world, I got to check that actually. Let's go to Objects, press E. The height is 0.5 right here. So let's go back to stone and let's put the height at just above 0.5. And let's bake again. Now as you guys can see, we have stone here instead of grass. Now pretty much let's actually get rid of dirt and let's remove the steepness for dirt and bake it again. So as you guys can see, we've got grass stopping at about 0.54. So this is pretty much how it works. Above 0.54, the default material is now stone. So let's move it down a little bit. Now everything should be stone because this whole ground is 0.5. So let's put it just above 0.5, like 5.1. Now up to 5.1 we have grass, above that we have stone. So this is actually a good way to do custom snow. So let's say we've got a map where we want to have snow on the very tops of the mountains. By default, snow is at 1. So really, snow is not really going to spawn unless you use the steepness. But let's say I want to have snow at the top of these hills. So I'm going to put snow down to about 5.6. Now at the top of these hills, we're going to have snow. Permanent snow, and it's going to be, only at this level. Below that, it will be grass by default. So that's pretty much how to use the steepness. Obviously, you guys can mess with that. There's some cool interactions you can get. Also, if you put the height at 0, it will not spawn the material as well. So pretty much if you put it at 1, it won't spawn it. If you put it at 0, it won't spawn it. So generally the edges for a lot of these are not really good for spawning custom materials. Okay, so let's move on to some of these checkboxes down here. Now, guys, I've been focusing on using baking, and I will be doing that for most of this. So by default, what your material is going to look like is something like this. So let's take stone for example. Let's remove all these. Those do some different things. So right now we've got all these checkboxes, and they are colorblind friendly. He recently added that in an update not too long ago. But essentially, rocky is the only one that is checked. So actually, I will need to get some transition, actually height in here, and I'm gonna pretty much just bake stone all over, so we can use this as an example. So let's go over to details. These checkboxes match checkboxes in the details. So notice we've got grassy 1 and 2, flowery 1 and 2, rocky, road, snow, and foundation, and all those. Foundation down doesn't have to do with spawning items on it, but snowy up does. So let's look in details. We currently have grass, grass 2, flower 1, flower 2, rock, road, and snow. Now these directly match these ones here. So let's say we don't want to have rocky, right? And we don't have anything in rocky here. So when we bake it, it's going to be flat, nothing's going to be on it. It's going to be pretty boring. So let me check road. Now, which one you check is up to you. They give you multiple options just in case you want to use them. So now that I checked road, let's go into details, and let's put a couple of these details into road. So let's click on flowers, and I'm going to check road for flowers. Let's go wheat, and I'm going to check road for wheat. Now if we bake the materials, if we have the density and chance up, let's put the chance up, and we're also going to need to change something in stone itself. Let's change the overgrowth up. And now when we go to details and bake, we should see them appear. And here we are. So now we've just pasted a bunch of these custom details on here. And so pretty much this works about the same for resources. So if you look on resources, there's obviously a ton of them, but at the bottom you've got these same options. Alright, so let's check road here for this pine tree, and let's get a couple other ones. Let's get ornament. That should be, I think it's pretty much like a Christmas tree. So let's bake it now, and we should have new types of trees showing up on here. Okay, so the problem with the Christmas tree, I should have spotted this, but the density and chance are down on that as well. So you need to make sure those are up so that they can spawn there as well. So now guys, as you can see, we've customly spawned a bunch of these resources and details now on our material. So this is really useful for editing your map and making it custom areas and stuff like that. Of course, this is up to you guys how you want to organize this. Just so you know though, when you go to Materials tab, the details will disappear. Now the resources stay there because they are large objects, but the details disappear so that you can actually see what's down there. So I'm going to uncheck road here, and I'm going to rebake details. It should get rid of them. Same with resources. Should get rid of all the resources and details. And I'm just going to go back to the materials because we're pretty much done with using road right now. So let's get rid of road completely, and let's move on to how to paint your own surfaces. So let's say I'm going to set up a base sort of thing here where we've got the height, no not height, steepness for dirt, and maybe we'll put steepness a little lower. I mean a little higher, never mind, we want a little grass on the top. There we go. So we've got some steepness now, and we've got this custom area, but let's say we want to paint a pathway up it. Now, if you try to paint, I haven't really even gone over how to paint yet, and this was the biggest thing that changed in the update. So if you try to paint, let's say I want to paint gravel, right? A gravel path, it's not going to work. You won't see anything happening. Now, over here in terms of the painting tools, here's some basics. Noise and size. I'm going to show you size is obviously how large the painter is. Noise will change how many speckles will be inside your painted area, and I'll show you that later. Primary, this button has to do with which landscape you're painting onto, whether it's the background landscape, I don't actually have any right now, or the primary landscape, which is this right here, which your player actually interacts with. Now, preview baked is what we need. So if you click preview baked, you will see it'll actually change, and this pretty much removes all bake settings. So if you press bake, it'll set you back to preview baked. So if I uncheck preview baked, I can now draw my own pathways. Now this is cool, and this is part of the fix, but let's say I want to save it, right? Let's save the map. Let's bake the satellite, and let's play this map. So we're going to get into this, and what you're going to see pretty quickly is that it didn't work. So let's go find that area, and let's go see that it didn't work. Okay, so I'm going to spawn in a vehicle, and we're not going to have any gravel there. That was weird. So as you guys can see, right around here we should have a gravel path. There is no gravel path, and I don't know why it does this, but it confused a lot of people, and it confused me for a long time. Now I finally figured out how to fix this. So let's head back to the editor, and I'm going to show you guys how to fix this. Now, it's best to start adding your custom materials right as soon as you get into the editor. Now guys, of course, if we go back to materials and have preview baked unchecked, we're going to see what we did before. So it's pretty confusing because you're like, where the heck is my custom path? I don't know where it went. So what we're going to want to do is press Control Z. Now, this does something pretty interesting. You can't find any documentation on this, and then actually my brother showed me this. He's the one that figured this out. When you press Control Z, it takes your baked materials and applies them to your non-baked area. So technically I can draw all over this again, and if we go back to preview baked, it's going to be exactly the same. So essentially copied this onto our unbaked layer. Now, the way you've got to be able to paint these on and have them stick is you've got to have some of these things checked over here. So let's select gravel. We need to make sure we have manually painted on. Now ignore footprint is not necessary, and neither is ignore height, or I think ignore steepness. So let's paint on a pathway here. Actually, it'll be pretty big. Let's just paint it on like that. And we're going to save it, and we're going to now bake it. Now, as you guys can see, something interesting's happened. So I baked it, right? And preview baked appeared. Okay, so we went back to the preview baked layer. Now if we go back to the other layer, we can see my previous painting is still there. But now in preview baked, we have a little bit of gravel here. Now this is progress. If we play our map, this is going to be here. But the reason it disappeared through this area is because we have ignore steepness checked. Now if we check ignore steepness and bake, we should have a change here. And as you guys can see, we now have grass instead of gravel. Now this is still a little confusing, so let's go back to preview baked. And now let's press ignore height. Now let's bake, and there we go. We have our pathway. Now of course guys, this may seem a little complicated, but the main thing you need to know is that you need to have manually painted checked, ignore steepness checked, and ignore height. If you don't have manually painted checked, it won't even show up. If you don't have ignore steepness, the steepness baking will override it. If you don't have ignore height, it'll be overridden on other levels. So I would definitely make sure to have all of these checked. Now guys, there's some extra checks here, as in foundation and ignore footprint. These have to do with how objects interact with them. Foundation, I think, has to do with what types of materials you can place the new oil rigs on, or the semi-new oil rigs. They've been out for a while. The ignore footprint has to do with what type of sound it makes when your character walks on there. So obviously you guys can experiment with that. And one extra thing that's pretty interesting, as you guys can see, if you compare baked layer to non-baked layer, there's a big difference in terms of quality. So we colored this down, in a non-detailed format, but then we baked it, and it automatically sort of spiffed it up for us. So now if we want to bake low quality, it'll go back to that. So there are options with that as well. Now of course guys, I will test this out with another one just to show you guys it does work. It's not just gravel that it works with. So remember, I'm going to make this a little smaller, but you do have to check manually painted, ignore steepness, and ignore height. Besides that, doesn't really matter for us. So now I'm just going to paint a little area. You do have to go back to preview baked, and you need to make sure that's off. So I'm going to paint over this into just a random shape here, so that we'll be able to see that it works. Now let's do bake high quality, and as you guys can see, it has saved. So let's go test it. Obviously save your map. If you guys don't save, it won't apply. Don't do that. That'll be dumb. Okay, that's just a small step that you should remember how to do. Now let's go back into our map. So as you guys can see, it obviously worked. We've got our nice snow pathway here. We have our gravel pathway that goes up the mountainside. The nice thing about doing it this way, once you get it to work, is that it does mesh it into the other landscapes pretty well. So anyway guys, hopefully you learned all that you need to know about material tools. It took me quite a while to make this video because I had to experiment with all the different options and actually get the manual painting part to work. That was the only thing that changed in the update that really screwed up custom map making, because if you don't know how to use it, it forces you to bake everything on using the defaults. So anyway guys, please like this video if you enjoyed it. Please share it with your friends if they're having trouble with this. I've been commented so many times requesting this video, and finally I got around to actually doing it. So hopefully you guys enjoy this, and please subscribe if you want to see some more. I will see you all